let's start a little bit more about. Well, I want to before we get to Bellwether. I want to get kind of your story. Um,
Mm.
what you did before Bellwether, um, and how you actually came to start Bellwether. I want to hear the kind of the origin story, if you will,
The
of
origin
Mr. Phil
story.
Elliott.
Well, actually a qualified boat builder in the sense that I used to build racing yachts out of fiberglass and carbon fiber. So, you know, I think my parents came into my room and said, "What do you want to do? Go to university or do a trade?" And I picked a trade because I was really into sailing, and so my passion for sailing drove me into a trade of building boats. Um, and building boats is just like any trade. It's hard on your
Mhm.
body, but it teaches you some fundamental skills around how to work with, materials and understand how things go together. So that sort of like spurred my mind in terms of like, it's like a good base and a good foundation. And I did many roles after that for sort of like till I was perhaps in my early 30s. It included estimation
Mm.
for shop fitting and retail shop fit outs, which, got me interested in that whole sector. I spent a lot of time working in sales,
Mhm.
and sales is a tough game. It's a rewarding game, but it's a tough game, right? And you learn your people skills. You start to think quite scientifically about what sort of like creates a domino effect back on different things.
Mhm.
And then when I finished a business in the signage game, and I had sort of like a restraint of trade. So that means that you can't go back into
Right.
the same industry and compete with the original company that
Right.
you were working for.
Mhm.
So we have a show here in New Zealand called Country Calendar, and you probably have a similar version in the States or many of them. And it's every week for half an hour they go onto a different farm, whether it's blueberry farm, a sheep farm, a
Right.
cattle farm, and they just film the life and document the life of the people living on it. And
Mm.
I was sort of sitting there watching that and thought, wow, I could be a farmer. Let's give this a go. So I actually got a job on a dairy farm. I applied for
Oh,
many, and
wow.
they sort of said, you've got to have three working dogs because how are you going to get these sheep to come down off the mountain? And I didn't have working dogs because I was living in the city. Like everybody has poodles and like hyperallergenic dogs. I didn't even have a dog. So yeah, got a job on a dairy farm eventually. Worked in that industry for 3 or 4 years, and the dairy industry is quite a big industry in New Zealand because it produces a lot of export revenue.
Mhm.
And what's happened in farming is it's all become about input. So if I feed this to my cows and it has this metabolizable energy,
Mhm.
it costs me this much per ton to put in per day per cow et cetera, et cetera. And then you're sort of looking at what you produce out the other side each day. So each day the tanker driver comes and picks up the milk. They do a test on it, and it comes to an app on your phone, and it tells you what you scored. So it's like every 24 hours you're like
Wow.
adjusting
Mm.
what you're feeding the cows. So that got me super interested in data.
Okay.
And where this crosses over to Bellwether is that it's a family business. So we have Scott and Amy that are like crucial parts as well as the rest of the team now.
Mhm.
And Amy was doing marketing for retailers. That was her job. It was called Marcoms. And we still have the original business called Marcoms, but it is a data company now.
Mm.
And Marcoms stands for Marketing Communications. And she had a retailer that was claiming that her marketing and her efforts were not delivering anything. So we went and mystery shopped a couple of the stores, and we realized that the staff working in the store were literally standing behind the counter having what we now call in Bellwether a pos party. So they look busy. They're kind of like looking down at their screens like, oh, I'm doing something, right? And they're not out, you know, greeting, meeting, and closing and upselling. That's where we got into measuring foot traffic. We developed our own software application to do this, and the product is where it is now since 2014. So we're almost 10 years.
Mm.
Uh, we've been developing that product and evolving it towards trying to adapt the data strategies back towards where the opportunities are in retail.
The
Yeah.
question that I want to ask, and I think this will actually help a lot of people understand Bellwether. Like, what is the problem that Bellwether is solving to help solve or identify for retailers?
Yeah, look, it's real straightforward, and what what's what's the most mind blowing for us is that we get all this data, and there's so many different ways that you can display it on tiles, on line graphs, on pie charts, like
Right.
et cetera. But it always leads back to one point on our dashboard, which is the weighted opportunities lost.
Mm,
So the most common thing that people use footfall and retail sales data for is to work out a conversion rate. And a conversion rate is really a percentage. It's, I had 100 customers walk into my store
right.
and we made 10 transactions. So we got a conversion rate of 10%, right? But when we start talking to our retail teams, they don't work in percentages.
Mm-mm.
It's some of them will, and some of them will be able to adapt to it and understand how important that is. But if I ask you what's the difference or the importance of 9% versus 10%,
Mm-hmm.
it's very hard to contextualize that, right? But if I let you know that you were two transactions short of our goal,
Yeah. Right.
you can understand that. And
Mm-hmm.
if you know that the two transactions, because let's just say we're retailer X and retailer X does $150 as an average transaction value, so an ATV, and we were two transactions short in that hour, we know that we missed $300.
Mm.
That was, we can quantify it.
Correct.
So then when we start to do that across the 7 days and all of the trading hours that probably are between 60 and 70 hours a week, and we start to work out where are the most leaks, where are we
Mm.
leaving the most money on the table, we can just pick that one day and that one time slot and set a goal with the team to try and eliminate dropping those transactions
Mm-hmm.
for weeks in a row. So there's a little quick goal, a little way that we can set that. And when you get into the big shops, like with huge foot traffic, we won't be talking about two in an hour. We'll be talking
Right.
about we're 18 transactions short, 18, and we might have a lower ATV of say $25. So it swings and roundabouts as to what it's worth, depending on what you're selling and what type of
Mm-hmm.
retailer you are.
It almost seems like that Bellwether provides and excuse me if this seems very too simple, but a
Yeah.
almost a measure of gamification to the data where the person can actually see the data and you can actually utilize it to meet your certain goals, meet your goals, right? When you get the data and it's parsed out based on the actual retailer and what the retailer specifically may need or what they're going to be focused on, they can actually turn that data almost into kind of a gamification mindset or model, just like you just spoke about around. You know what? I know that you guys don't know what the difference is between 9 and 10% is, but guess what? There's you missed two transactions, and those two transactions reduced our conversion rate to X, Y, and Z. But if
Mhm.
you turn it to almost a gamification mindset, a model, how many are you good for? How many conversions are you good for today? Are you good for five? Hey Phil, what about you? I need six. I need six today. Right. And so it almost takes the data that you need to drive your business and actually turns it into a I hate to use the word game, but it actually turns it into almost a competitive mindset that actually helps Trinity and Phil kind of do their job. Is that it? Am I
Yeah. No,
oversimplifying it
no, I
or?
think that like there's a range of ways that teams look to approach it, and it really depends on sort of the culture of and the values of each retailer in terms
True.
of how they approach it. And also it can depend on the labor model that they're running.
Mm,
So they've got if they've got several people working on the shop floor and they get some busy hours where they might be looking at 40 or 80 customers an hour coming onto the shop floor,
correct.
sometimes it becomes a team goal from a gamification
Hmm.
perspective
Hmm.
where you actually start to zone the shop. So Trinity's actually the fastest out of the three of us on the till. So we'll
Exactly.
put her on the till. And Steve is really personable and he can actually cross sell and multi sell to multiple people. So we'll put him in the greeting zone of the shop. And Phil has got depth of product knowledge and can walk quite quickly. So he's going to work on the fitting rooms. So we can become quite tactical and we can look to see whether when we run that mode, whether we actually start getting those two transactions that we're traditionally or statistically dropping all the time on Saturdays at 2 o'clock. And then if it doesn't, and we still get those come through, we
Hmm.
can start to pivot again and look at like what other things could we do, right? Because sometimes the answers don't come easy,
Hmm. Hmm.
and if it was easy, we'd already be doing it, right? But it could be that actually we need somebody else on the shop floor, could be the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
So we need to hire Sarah for 4 hours on a Saturday to work in the sweet spot from 11 till 3. And all of a sudden, not only do we get those two ticks, we actually get two more transactions and we can lift our conversion rate from 10% to 11%. So we've got what we call like a data blind spot where we
Mm.
actually got
Mm.
more opportunity than we can really, really comprehend. And so that's the journey that a lot of people go on.
Phil, you are like I'm literally like getting goosebumps because that's exactly how I would actually like look at my markets, and
Yeah.
I would look at, because I actually did have Virginia and I had Maryland, and I would look at the two and understand, of course they had different buying patterns, they had different customers, different demographics, but at the end of the day there were still certain threads that I can actually, tie from one store, one market to the next. And if we
Yeah.
actually focus in on those threads and not so
Mhm.
much the actual differences, from one market to the next, but it's that thread, if you will. It could be conversion rate, right? Relative to Bellwether. If you focus in on that, then the markets are more alike than not. So I think that's
Yeah.
the other thing, that when I think about, the service and the platform that you provide that thread that kind of takes all of the other, all your empirical thoughts and ideas out and just focuses in on the data, which individuals need to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there's so many different moving parts in terms of what affects conversion,
Hmm.
and it creates an unsubjective pathway for a regional manager to work with their store managers to slowly work on how they are going to get their conversion up, because the
Yeah, yeah,
answers will be different in every store. And
100%.
as long as we have humans working in the retail environment, which I hope we do forever,
Yes.
there's always going to be different variables at play, because each month we have a new person join the team and we have somebody leave, so we've just got this constant sort of like change happening in the business.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
that's about adapting through moving through the seasons, and the different parts of the year and the pressures that the seasonality creates, right?
yeah.
And then that's also about throwing in our competitors around us and what promotions they're running, and that how that's affecting our conversion, right? So there are certainly sort of like effects that move out and out and out that we can sort of like start to pull in and look at this data and make opinions, right?
Hmm. Yeah. What is different about Bellwether, and then also not just what's different, but the return on investment that you could talk to retail brands who are thinking about, needing more data into their stores, but they need a solution and they don't know where to turn, but they're nervous about the process.
Well, there's two sides to that coin. There's the Bellwether side. So the Bellwether software really does guide the whole team. So from the associates that work on the shop floor, the assistant manager, the store manager, and the layers above in corporate, right? And it really focuses on finding where you're missing, because if you can figure out statistically where you're missing the most, it's a little bit like the movie Moneyball. You're
Yeah,
using the data to pick the right spots, right?
great movie.
That's what Bellwether does better than any other conversion or foot traffic software. It is compelling, and the ROI is huge. The other side of the coin that I alluded to is that it will pull some people in directions that they don't feel comfortable or they're not
Mm.
skilled enough in, right?
Mm.
So if Bellwether points out that on Saturday from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m., you're missing 18 transactions at $80 each and you can't fix it,
Mm.
that's going to cause a problem for you with your manager or the manager's manager, right? So there's two sides to it. It will identify very clearly where you'll find your ROI. It is always up to the retailer and the retail team to accomplish getting that money back in the till, right?
Mm.
And that can cause some problems. We have seen some people get in a bit of trouble with Bellwether because they don't have the skills internally to overcome or manage the
Yeah. Yeah.
situation that's occurring in the
Yeah.
retail store. And that's where they have to take accountability and lean into the support and the structure that normally their business will have. But if you're a lazy person, or you're somebody that's got a cruisy job and don't care much about KPIs, you probably won't like Bellwether. But if you're a business or a retail company that is always under threat from their competitors, always trying to improve the P&L so that you can give pay rises and replenish a shop fit out every 6 years and do all the right things,
Mm-hmm.
then definitely Bellwether is a software product that will not let you down, and it will find the opportunities. And what we do is we incrementally increase those conversion rates, and it keeps focusing back on where we've got the opportunity. We may never work on Mondays or Tuesdays. It's likely we'll work on Mondays because I bet you the manager works from Tuesday to Saturday and the ASM works on Sunday to Monday, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
all these different things, but each business is different. And finally, so I talked about the two sides of the coin. Bellwether will actually help you to get your data literacy up. So they the team is focused not on how much foot traffic you got and not on how many sales you got. It's focused on trying to figure out how to get you to understand how to interpret the data to find those opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we can't change your foot traffic. We're not your marketing department. We're not even like your town planners that are like changing the design of a mall or a street complex. Those things are outside of our control. We focus on with what you've got, where you could have got more.
Mm-hmm. So, Phil, I just want to thank you for this first installment of getting to know getting to know you, getting to know Bellwether. I'm really excited about our next session and what we're going to be talking about. Right, getting more into kind of some of the innards of Bellwether and maybe some of those specific data points, but also Q4
Yeah,
and what that means. And I just want to thank you so much for being here.
that's a pleasure, Steve. It's been great to talk to you. I just enjoy your energy, and I feel like we've covered so much ground today. It was quite compelling. Well done.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.